Wait. Before I say anything else, I need you to understand one thing. This is not a story about anger. I want to be clear about that from the very beginning because I know how stories like this are supposed to go. The abandoned child. The parents who chose new families. The years of distance. And then the confrontation. The accounting. The settling of debts. This story does not go that way. Not because the abandonment was not real. It was real. Not because the distance was not painful. It was painful in a way that took me years and a great deal of careful work to understand and integrate. But because the people who left me were not villains. They were people. Complicated, frightened, imperfect people who made choices in the wreckage of a broken marriage that I was too young to understand at the time and old enough now to see clearly. And because what they both came back needing, within 7 months of each other, 25 years after that kitchen table in March, was not forgiveness exactly. It was something smaller and more specific and harder to give than forgiveness. They needed me to tell them who I had been while they were away. That is what this story is about. If you are new here, please subscribe right now and drop your country and local time in the comments. I read every single one. Now let me take you all the way back to the beginning. My name is Simone Archer. I am 36 years old. My parents divorced when I was 11. My father's name is Gerald. My mother's name is Patricia. They were married for 13 years. By the accounts of everyone who knew them, they had been genuinely happy for at least 8 of those years. The last 5 were harder in ways that children sense without being told, the particular tension of 2 people who have stopped choosing each other but have not yet decided what to do about it. The divorce came in March. A Tuesday evening. The kitchen table had a crack in one corner. My mother was wearing a blue cardigan I had always loved. The overhead light was too bright. They told me it was not my fault. They told me they loved me. They told me things would be different, but that different did not mean worse. I believed them. I wish I had known then what different was going to mean. Not so I could have braced for it. But so that 11-year-old girl sitting under that too bright light could have known that she was going to build something extraordinary from the space they were about to leave. She deserved to know that. My father remarried 3 years after the divorce. A woman named Donna who had 2 children of her own. I will not spend a great deal of time on this because I have spent enough time on it internally to understand it from the outside now. Donna was not unkind to me. She was simply a complete picture. She and her children and my father formed a family with its own gravity and its own interior life. I was someone who visited on alternating weekends and selected holidays. I watched my father become a stepfather with the presence and investment he had not quite managed as a father. I noted this the way children note things that are too large to process, carefully, quietly, filing it somewhere deep where it would not interfere with the business of getting through the day. My mother remarried 4 years after the divorce. A man named Robert who had no children and a preference for keeping it that way. He was cordial to me in the specific way of someone who has decided on a life and is willing to accommodate necessary appendages but is not going to pretend the accommodation is something it is not. I visited my mother and Robert on alternating weekends and selected holidays. I was 11 years old when the divorce happened and I was 18 when I left for university, and in the years between I became, out of necessity, the most self-sufficient version of myself I could manage. I cooked my own meals. I managed my own schedule. I handled my own crises. I learned not to need things from people who were not positioned to provide them. I was a good student. I was capable. I was quiet in the ways that matter, not withdrawn, not damaged in any visible sense, just precise about where I spent my energy and careful about what I expected from the world. The word adults used was mature. The word they meant was alone. I left for university in North Carolina at 18. Not running away, I want to be clear about that. Leaving toward something. Toward a life I was going to build on my own terms, in my own time, without waiting for anyone to help me build it. I studied psychology. I went on for a master's in social work. I became a family therapist. I know. The irony is not lost on me. But I have thought about it enough to understand it is not irony so much as logic. The people most shaped by family dynamics are often the ones most equipped to help others navigate them. Not because their own experience gives them answers. Because it gives them a particular quality of listening. I built a practice in Durham, North Carolina. A partner named Marcus who was patient and genuinely kind and who understood from the early days of our relationship that I carried certain things carefully and needed space to carry them. I was in contact with both of my parents throughout my adult years. Not intimately. Not with the warmth of a close family. Birthday calls. Occasional visits. The maintenance of something that had never been rebuilt after the divorce but that had also never entirely broken. My father called every few weeks. Cheerful, surface calls. My mother called less often. More formal. Updates about Robert, about the neighborhood, about her book club. They asked about my life in the general way of people who love someone and have not learned how to love them specifically. I received these calls and gave them what they asked for. And then within 7 months of each other something shifted. My father called me on a Thursday afternoon in October. I knew before he spoke that something was different. The quality of his quiet before he started talking told me. He told me that Donna had been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. I expressed genuine sympathy. Whatever my complicated feelings about my father's marriage, I had always felt warmth for Donna and felt it honestly now. Then my father said something unexpected. He said, "Simone, I want to talk to you. About us. About after the divorce." I was very still. I know I was not, I know things were not right. During those years. With you. I was building something new and I was so focused on the building that I did not look back at what I had left. At who I had left. He paused. "I want to understand it," he said. "If you are willing to tell me. I want to understand what those years were like for you." I took a very long breath. Then I said something that took everything I had professionally and personally to say cleanly. I said, "Dad, I am willing to have this conversation. But I need you to understand what you are asking for. You are asking me to take you into the years you were not in. To describe a childhood you did not witness. That is not a small thing to ask and it is not a comfortable thing to give. Can you hold that before you ask me to do it?" A long pause. "Yes," he said. "I can hold that. And I need you to listen without defending," I said. "Not because I am going to attack you. But because the moment you start explaining your choices I will stop being able to tell you what the choices felt like from where I was standing. Can you do that?" Another pause. Longer. "Yes," he said quietly. "I can do that." We talked for 3 hours. I want to tell you what I told him. Not all of it, some of it is mine and I am keeping it. But the shape of it. I told him about the kitchen table with the cracked corner. About the blue cardigan. About the overhead light that was too bright for what was being said beneath it. I told him about the alternating weekends. About arriving at his house and finding a home that had filled up around me while I was not there, the specific experience of being a guest in a place where you are theoretically family. I told him about cooking my own meals. About managing my own schedule. About the school events he had attended when he could, which was not always, and what it had meant to scan the audience and see Donna's children's faces and not see his. I told him about being mature. About what mature had cost. About the specific efficiency of a child who has learned that her needs are going to be managed by herself and who has become so good at managing them that she stops noticing she has them. I told him about the university decision. About leaving towards something rather than away from something and the distinction between those two things. And then I told him something I had not planned to tell him. I told him that I had become a family therapist. And that every family that had ever sat across from me in my office, every broken relationship, every wound between parent and child, every conversation that was happening 20 years too late, every single one of them had been easier for me to hold because I had been sitting with my own version of it for 25 years. You left me with something, I said. It was not what you intended to leave me. But it was something real. And I have built a whole career from understanding it. My father was quiet for a very long time. Then he said, "That does not make it right." "No," I said. "It does not make it right. But it makes it part of something. Which is different from it being only a wound." He could not speak for a moment. When he could, he said, "Simone. I am so sorry. Not for the divorce. For the years after it. For building something new so completely that I did not look back." "I know," I said. "Can you forgive me?" I thought about that question carefully. The real version of it, not the reflexive version. "I forgave you a long time ago," I said. "That was never the question. The question was whether you would ever understand what there was to forgive." He was quiet. "Now you understand," I said. "That is what I needed." My mother called in April. Robert had been offered a position overseas. A significant opportunity. They were considering it seriously. Then she said, "But before we decide, I need to talk to you. About us. About after the divorce." I sat down. I recognized everything about what was happening. The quality of the pause. The specificity of what she was asking for. The 7 months between my father's call and hers. I said, "Mom. I need to tell you something." "What?" she said. "Dad called me in October. He asked me the same thing." A very long silence. "He did?" "He did," I said. Another silence. I could hear her breathing. Processing. "What did you tell him?" she asked. "The truth," I said. "The same thing I am going to tell you. If you are ready to hear it the way I need you to hear it." She said she was ready. She was not entirely ready. No one is ever entirely ready for the truth about what their choices meant to the people who lived inside them. But she was willing, which is the more important thing. And willingness, even imperfect willingness, is what allows the conversation to happen. My conversation with my mother was different from the one with my father in its texture but identical in its substance. She was more defensive initially. She had explanations ready. The divorce had been hard on her. Robert had been a new beginning she had needed. She had been surviving. I said, "Mom. I know you were surviving. I know the divorce was hard. I know Robert was what you needed. I am not disputing any of that. What I am telling you is that while you were surviving, I was also surviving. Alone. At 11. At 13. At 15. And the difference between your surviving and mine was that yours had someone beside you and mine did not." She was quiet for a long time. "I should have been beside you," she said finally. "Yes," I said. "I am sorry, Simone." "I know," I said. "I believe you." We talked for 2.5 hours. When we finished she said, "Can I call you more?" "Real calls. Not the checking in calls." "Yes," I said. "I would like that." She has called every week since. I want to tell you something about the months after those 2 conversations. They were not magical. Healing is not magical. It is slow and nonlinear and full of moments when old patterns reassert themselves and you have to choose again to do the harder thing. But there were moments. My father came to visit me in Durham in the spring. First time he had ever come to my city. He walked through my apartment slowly and looked at the bookshelves and the things on the walls and the small evidence of a life I had built entirely without him. He sat at my kitchen table and had coffee with Marcus and was present in a way that felt different from every previous version of his presence. Before he left he stood in the hallway and looked at me. He said, "You built something real." "I did," I said. "Without much help from me," he said. "Without much help from you," I agreed. He nodded. The specific nod of a man accepting something he knows he has earned. I am sorry, he said. I am genuinely sorry. I know, I said. I know you are. I hugged him. It was the first hug from my father in 30 years that felt like something real rather than something performed. The first one that did not have the specific careful distance of two people maintaining the form of a relationship rather than its substance. I held on to it for a long time. My mother came with Robert 6 months later. She walked through the same rooms. She sat at the same kitchen table. She asked real questions about my work, about Marcus, about the practice. Before she left, she took my hands in the hallway. She said, "You are extraordinary. I need you to hear that from me. You are extraordinary, and I am sorry I did not say it when saying it would have cost me something." I looked at her. "You are saying it now," I said. "Yes," she said. "I am saying it now." "That is not nothing," I said. "No," she said. Her eyes were wet. "It is not nothing." My grandmother Ruth called me the week after my father's visit. She was 83 years old. My father's mother. The one person in my family who had always seen me clearly, who had called me on birthdays without fail, who had been the through line of consistency in a childhood that had very little of it. She said, "I heard your father came to see you." "He did," I said. "How was it?" I thought about how to answer that. "It was real," I said. "It was genuinely real." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your grandfather and I used to say that the hardest thing about loving someone is learning to love them the way they need to be loved rather than the way you know how." I held that. "Your parents loved you the way they knew how," she said. "The way they knew how was not always the way you needed. That is the gap. That is always the gap." "I know," I said. "The gap can be crossed," she said. "It takes longer than it should. But it can be crossed." "We are crossing it," I said. "Good," she said. "Keep going." Ruth passed away the following January. Peacefully, at home. I was there. I held her hand. She was the first person I called when I needed to not be alone. I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for what she was to me during the years when almost no one else was. It has been 2 years since those conversations. My father calls every week. Sometimes the calls are deep and present and genuinely connected. Sometimes they fall back into the surface patterns of 30 years. When they do, I say gently, "Come back, Dad." And he does. My mother emails more than she calls. It suits her, the written word, the time to think. The emails are thoughtful. She asks questions and waits for answers. Robert took the overseas position. My mother went. She calls from overseas more than she called from 20 minutes away for the previous decade. I think about that kitchen table in March sometimes. The crack in the corner. The blue cardigan. The overhead light that was too bright. I think about what it would have meant to the 11-year-old under that light if someone had told her. 25 years. It is going to take 25 years. But they are going to come back. Both of them. Within 7 months of each other. Needing the same thing. They are going to need you to tell them who you were while they were away. And you are going to be able to do it. Not because it will not hurt. It will hurt. But because you are going to become someone who can hold difficult things and say true things and survive the weight of what is honest. You are going to build that. Out of exactly what they are about to leave you with. I would have told her. Hold on. You are building something they cannot yet see. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been the child left behind while someone built something new? Have you ever had to survive something at an age when surviving should not have been required of you? And have you ever had someone come back, really come back, genuinely, completely, and understood that it mattered even when it came too late? Drop the word light in the comments if this story reached something real in you. And if you are new here, subscribe. Every single day I share a new story about family, about truth, and about the people who came back and the people who were still there when they did. I will see you in the next one. Kayla's dark truth.